think the MCG should be called the PTC, the Pink Toby Club.
And Stevens lined him up too. Let there be no mistake about that. Stevens went at him at 100 miles an hour. He get another go. And he grabs him. He's grabbed play on for holding the man.
I'm trying to think of an intro, to be honest. But, oh my God, we won a game of football money. That's the best intro we could possibly have because North Melbourne has arrived. Marnie, react. Give me your thoughts. Just explode right now.
Can I just say my timing is perfect because I've been on Further North to review 3 games this year and 2 of the games we've won. We beat Melbourne and I was on. We beat Carlton, I was on. And the other one was the Port game. So it's an undeniable combo.
A coincidence? I'm not sure. Or destiny. I'm not too sure, Marnie.
The OG winning combo. How good. How good was yesterday? So good.
It was so good. It was so good. And look, there's talking points through this game, which we'll get into. But, man, like this – okay, I think the best place to start is here, right? And I've written a couple of notes about it. We're going to do a similar format to the pod, of course, but there's a couple of different things. And maybe instead of laying out exactly how this game played out, the thing I wanted to start with, right, was I think this – is our most important win since the rebuild started, right? Because we've beaten West Coasts and we've beaten Richmonds and things like that. And we haven't done it convincingly and we got the wins and that's okay. But yes, Carlton is down and I understand all that. But this was a team that it's not on the bottom of the ladder. We're not playing or beating the teams that are below us. We're finally beating teams that are slightly above us. This team had finals aspirations. They've got Brownlow medalists and Coleman medalists and all these sort of players in their lineup. And look, we can, if you're slightly on the negative side, you can make excuses about, Carlton aren't where they want it. We went out and beat a very good team. We beat a team at the G. We don't lose at the G. We can't lose at the G. So I think this win is the most important win in like 6 years because I think last weekend we really knew we were coming, but to back up a really good performance and brought the pressure and all that sort of stuff, I think it's massive. But do you agree with that or how do you feel about this win within the rebuild and where we've been at?
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly significant achievement for us to have won the game yesterday. It's a 93-point turnaround from Good Friday.
Yeah, crazy.
That was 64 days between games. So for us to have come so far in such a short amount of time, I said in my review, when it turns quickly, and 64 days is not a long time in the grand scheme of things. And we've had one game in that window of time that's been decided by more than 2 goals, and that was the Collingwood game. And so when you look at the first 6 rounds of the season, unfortunately, as amazing as that D's game was, and I think it was something, it kind of felt like a bit of an out-of-body experience because I don't know how many more times we'll experience something like that for quite some time. But that D's game ended up being the outlier in the first 6 weeks of the year, whereas now we're playing a more competitive, sustainable, even brand of football that has put us in the frame to win every single game since Good Friday. And the Collingwood game is the outlier in that, but we were up in that game up until three-quarter time, or maybe until half-time. They probably got on top of us in the third quarter, but they were inaccurate. So I think for us to actually be able to come back to Melbourne and go to the MCG, which is a ground we don't play a lot of footy at, to a ground that traditionally has been owned by Carlton. They've requested more home games at the G this year. For us to go out and belt them in front of 56,000 people, nearly 57,000.
Yeah, good crowd.
Unbelievable. It was an awesome day. It was such a great day. And I think a lot of us felt good going into it. And obviously wasn't a perfect 4-quarter performance, but to still be able to be winning games of footy like that against quality opposition without playing 4 quarters of footy is pretty awesome signs.
One thing about the game for me was the fight we sort of brought to it, and not just like tackle pressure and all that sort of stuff, but there was genuine little spot fires going on all over the ground, which I think for us is such an important thing. Sounds silly, but we're angry, and old North Melbourne would not have taken that Good Friday game personally, and we went out and showed that we did take it personally, and we needed to make a massive difference. There's this moment personified for me, and which we'll get onto a little bit later in more depth. But I don't know who number 29 is for Carlton. You're the Carlton expert here, so I need you to tell me that. But Jai Simpkin laid a massive bump on this guy after he was trying to fight everybody. He was trying to fight, Finn O'Sullivan, and he was just really getting fed up with what was going on and lashing out a little bit. He was just getting very, very physical, a few jumper punches. Simpkin laid him out at one point, and our team swept that ball up. Simpkin got on the end of a handball receive, and that contest that we won went forward, and Colby kicked another goal, his second goal from that. And I think that moment of like the captain sort of standing up and saying, you've been trying to beat on my guys a little bit here. I'm going to absolutely lay you out. And it feels a fair bump too, right in the front, right in the chest, put him into the turf. And we went on and pushed on and kicked a goal from that. And I think that for me just sums up this sort of performance. And it's fantastic leadership from Jai to do it in a fair way as well. Send the message, but let someone like that know that you can't just push us around anymore, and hopefully let the football world know you're not pushing us around anymore. Because as North fans, we've seen this coming. Everyone's talking about the Freo game. North showed this. This has been since Good Friday. We've done this in spurts, and some more consistently than others. But for me, we've been doing this since Good Friday. I loved that moment. I thought it was fantastic. It made me feel like old school North Carlton games that I've seen, from even through the 90s days and things like that, when it was really physical and it's these two big Melbourne clubs. So, look, do you feel like do you think we've turned the corner? And when I say turn the corner, it feels like we're consistent every week, and I know we're going to bring that pressure and we're not going to get blown out anymore. Do you feel similar?
100%. And I think it's really important to remember that we can still improve without it being perfect. I can't believe some of the things I read even after yesterday's game. Like, don't get me wrong. We absolutely went into our shell in the last quarter, and we tried to protect the lead from the 10-minute mark of the last quarter, which almost came to bite us in the ass. And I would have liked us to be a little bit more aggressive for a little bit longer. That game yesterday, we could have won by 10 goals, but
absolutely,
we were up by 46 points late in the third quarter. And 12 months ago, we watched a 9-goal lead against Collingwood evaporate in front of our eyes. And I would much
It was about this time last year too.
Yeah, and I would much rather the lessons be us winning these games by 11 points, 12 points, than losing by 1 point or a goal, or, you know what I mean? Like the last quarter yesterday, while it was disappointing, it wasn't more disappointing than losing against Fremantle last week, when we won just about every stat on the score sheet and weren't able to just get the win. So I think we need to learn how to win games no matter how they come, because when we do start rising up the ladder and when we are starting to put ourselves in the frame for finals contention, which could be in the next few years, we need to learn how to win in every way, shape and form, because the ugly wins, they're still going to count for something when you're pushing for September. You know what I mean? So I just think that being able to play this consistent, sustainable brand of footy is so important, because that's the only way the wins are going to come. We've got to put ourselves in the frame to win these games. So as someone who loves this club and wants to see the club succeed, I can see us succeeding by the 4 points that we're banking at the end of these games, and not by the promise and the hope that we had shown against Freo, or even in the draw against Brisbane or against Essendon. It's the wins that are going to count. And I always say this, I'm done with honourable losses. They don't exist anymore. I think we need to start putting together more performances like we showed in the second and third quarters yesterday. Yes, absolutely. But we also need to be able to finish the work and finish our good work. And we were able to do that yesterday against the Blues.
We've gone from complaining about losing by 60 to complaining we're losing by 6 to complaining that we won a game but we didn't play well in the last quarter. If that's not improvement, I don't know what is. They're still complaining, and that's the internet, and that's always going to happen. I understand that. I do agree with what you said previously as well. Like some of the things that people are sort of throwing around online after the game. Look, we're all in our emotions and in our feelings and that sort of stuff. The last quarter gave me an absolute heart attack, but we did the work. And did I think they were going to overrun us? I kind of didn't. You know, I know they came and we didn't score in the last quarter, but I didn't think Carlton would get us. And I'm the most pessimistic North fan ever. You know what I mean? Like, and I believe that we're gonna be okay and we're not gonna get blown out anymore. So I think that's massive. And one more thing before we start maybe talking about the game is specifically a little bit more, I just want to say thank you, Alistair Clarkson, for coming to this club and doing this to us, because he's copped so much negativity from fans, from the media. The 3 years or 2.5 years he's had at this club, with nearly a year of it wiped away with the Hawthorn stuff. This is Clarkson. And the players are playing really well and the team itself is coming together, but this is him doing this. And he's copped so much negativity. And I think we all as a fan base need to appreciate, one, things I've been saying for a while, which is time. Give this team time. They're not going to turn it around already. I don't think we should have expected Clarkson to make us into this finals contending team already. But you can see his blueprint all over this. We get with the toughness we're bringing, the pressure. He said it the best and fairest last year. This is the first time he believes in his time at the club that we have a list that we can build a game plan around. And we've been questioning that the first couple of months of the season. And now we're seeing it. We saw it against Frere. We've seen it the last 6 to 8 weeks, slowly coming together piece by piece. The defense is so much improved. The names aren't there, but the system is there. The midfield, look what they've done the last couple of weeks with pressure and defending the ground. That's coming here. And our forward line looks very, very dangerous. When our efficiency was nearly double Carlton's yesterday going into that forward line. And this is the Clarkson blueprint. So massive, massive shout out to Clarkson. You know, players like Dylan Stevens we've written off, and then he's a contributor. Constanti, people want to write off. He might be a contributor. Toby Pink epitomizes this. We writ him off last year, and he's contributing. And so many people, I feel like, we're starting to get very frustrated with Clarko, and give it some time. We're rebuilding a club, not a list. And I think he deserves massive, massive, massive credit. Do you want to touch on that at all? What are your thoughts on sort of maybe the criticism he's copped and where we're at now with him?
You just summarised it in one sentence. We're rebuilding a club, not a list. And I think there was so many things fundamentally wrong in every aspect of this football club for quite some time. And I think a lot of us maybe didn't understand just how deep it ran and how deep it cut. And these things do take time. And unfortunately, we don't have the resources that some of the other clubs do. But we do have a fighting spirit and we do have a willingness to turn this around. And some of the people that I've met over the past year and a half, from the fans and at the club and the players, the buy-in as a whole and as one club is sensational. And I don't think that anyone on this journey can undersell how important their part has been to making this club great again. And so whatever you've done, you know, whether you show up every week or whether you donate or whether you go watch the boys train or whether you send messages of support via social media week in, week out, it has been and can be a slog. And it's not to say that there won't be dark times again, because we will have performances that won't be great and we will have
100%.
big losses and there will be downward, maybe things, not downward trends, but there will be some things that won't be easy, but it's
it's not a linear progression, is it?
No, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And as long as you can stay the course and keep looking at the light at the end of the tunnel, we'll get there in the end.
Our midfield dominated yesterday. And once again, like sort of what I was going on about before was like, I'm glad they took that Good Friday game personally, and the midfield was the worst thing of that game. They got absolutely bullied by Carlton last time, and it was the complete opposite, especially the second and the third quarter. They were on top, and it wasn't actually, when you look at the stats and the metrics and things like that, Carlton won nearly every possession stat. You know, handballs, kicks, contested, uncontested possessions, marks. They did everything. They got more of everything than us, but it was our efficiency with the ball. Our handballing was, I've credited the Bulldogs for years about this, where their handballing is the best in the league for me, where they just know where everyone's going to be. And we would pick the ball up off the ground and fire a handball to the guy who's running past, and it would break the game open. And that's stuff that we've fundamentally not done well in the last few years, and that slows our transition. So And you can look on the other side of things with Carlton, where Cripps was absolutely nowhere to be seen like yesterday in that game. And Cripps is an absolute champion of this game, but he was nowhere, and there wasn't even a specific tag on him. Powell and Parker sort of were monitoring him around contests, but we were first to the ball. Cripps wasn't tagged out of the game. Our midfield as a collective beat them so badly, especially in that middle patch of the game, where their best player and one of the best players in the competition was genuinely irrelevant for the majority of that game. So a massive, massive shout out to that midfield, and everyone's sort of stepping up. And I don't think I've seen such what's the right word here? A performance where everybody is together and everyone knows where we're going to be, like a team performance. Did you sort of feel that from the game and from the midfield too?
Yeah, I thought yesterday was definitely every single player played their part yesterday in the game. Obviously, some more than others, but I thought every single player had an impact. And on reflection, the only person I thought that maybe was down on form compared to what they usually put out is Tristan Cherry. He was comprehensively beaten by Pitney. He probably got the better of TDK, which was pleasing considering when we played them last year. TDK was probably best on ground for Carlton. So I think that in itself is maybe a good thing because he's usually the only one that is consistently putting out, and he probably wasn't comprehensively beaten. Maybe he just leveled it out a little bit, but everyone chipped in and did something, some obviously more than others at different parts of the game. I thought the first quarter was particularly interesting. I think we did get lucky with Carlton's inaccuracy in front of goal, but at quarter time I sat there and I just thought this is the most boring game of football I've ever watched. But then in the second and third quarters, we started to turn it on and we sort of started to take control of the game. And for those of you who have followed Carlton this season, their pattern in game is they get on top in the first quarter and they fade out as the game goes on. So maybe part of our approach heading into this game is knowing that, trying to really neutralize Carlton's dominance in the first quarter and kind of turn it into a little bit of a slog and to a little bit of a contested game and a congested game. And then we sort of started to get on top in the second and third quarters. Now, part of that is obviously due to Carlton's inaccuracy in front of goal. There were 2 goals, 7 at halftime. But I think for us in the first quarter to be able to neutralize their impact and not really give them the dominant start they're so used to. And then we kind of took control from the second quarter, basically from Jack Darling's goal onwards. It was party time. For 2 quarters. I thought that was the most pleasing thing for me. And maybe it's something and a strategy that we kind of looked at heading into the game, because I think that's been their most dangerous part. And they would have played on confidence because of what they did to us on Good Friday and what they've done to us over the past few seasons. I haven't beaten them for about 3 or 4 seasons now. So maybe that's something that we looked at, identified before the game and tried to instill as the game went on. And if that was something that we were going to do and that was a strategy we took, then it's obviously something we did successfully.
Yeah, like on the commentary, because I couldn't make the game, unfortunately, because of work, and you were there, and it was interesting on the commentary that they were talking about how comprehensively beaten we were in the first. And I didn't feel like that watching the game on the broadcast. I thought Carlton were better. And yes, we were maybe lucky that they missed a few shots, but so did we. And Paul Curtis had did he kick a couple of points in the first quarter, I believe? And we could have, and they were very, very gettable shots for him as well. So, I think we arguably broke even with them. Maybe they were slightly on top, but we still didn't give them the freedom and the transition that, we always do give up, and how Fremantle got on top of us the week before and things like that. So I think it was a little bit unfair maybe from the criticism that the commentary were giving us. I mean, 9-18, they're 2 goals 6 to 1 goal 3. So we had plenty of opportunities as well. So, I think our first quarter, and you're right, like Carlton are known for sort of starting big. I mean, the Bombers game, which was a week or 2 ago, whenever they played that, was epitomizing that, where, they were so hot in the first quarter and then just fall away. So, we really nullified them and didn't make them look incredible. And, as we go into the next couple of quarters, clearly turning it on, because I think let's go to the third quarter really quickly, because with the second quarter was Rolls-Royce stuff, and we're going to touch on this the whole pod because it's fantastic. But they kicked a couple of goals in a row, and that was a point for me where it was this is the time where we stand up or we drop away, and we're either going to win it or lose it at that point of the game. And Robert Hansen Jr. kicked a really nice goal in response to the 2 Carlton goals in a row. And I just think that was a point where it shows how much we've matured, because old North Melbourne, last year North Melbourne would have gone, they've kicked 2 goals in a row. It's back to about 30-odd points. Who knows which direction it's going to go. And most likely, as we've seen, it's going to go downhill. But we played the same game. We didn't let up. We kept doing the things we were doing well, and we got back in the game, and Robert Hansen kicks that really, really nice goal, and a nice little celebration from him too. So I personally think that was a massive sort of maturity moment for the whole club, and especially the midfield for not letting them continuously get it out, because I think they won a couple of clearances from that. And then, look, let's touch on the fourth a little bit here, because we're going to give so much praise to this club in this episode, but we have to also talk about the fourth. Now, no score for us in the quarter. The first 10 minutes of that quarter, no one was doing anything. Carlton weren't on top of us. We weren't on top of them. The game really neutralized into, almost like you pointed out, what you thought the first quarter was a really boring part of the game when nothing happened. I watched the replay again this morning so I could watch it without being emotional, and nothing really happened. And I was surprised, because I felt like when I was watching it, Carlton were on top of us most of that quarter, but it was really only the last chunk, maybe last 10 minutes of the quarter, that they really got on top. When you're in the ground, what was the feeling like when they started coming in the last quarter? And maybe sum up your thoughts on our last quarter performance.
I was definitely nervous. I felt like we needed one more goal to kind of seal the deal and close the door shut, but we weren't able to do that. I think we left the door slightly ajar, and I think they kicked 2 or 3 goals and then we couldn't respond. So maybe it felt like they gave them a bit of a sniff and they kind of got on a bit of a roll. That was disappointing, I think, and you can't shy away from that. And there were patches in the last sort of 15 minutes where we were able to stabilize a little bit and actually just let the ball play out in a bit of congestion. And, it was quite contested and there were repeated ball ups and stoppages. So I guess that was definitely a positive for us to be able to do that. But it's still a work in progress. And that's, I guess, what we have to kind of look at. Like, I'm thrilled and I'm so glad that we're able to hold our nerve, particularly in those final 90 seconds. I think we were able to kind of get our hands on the ball a little bit more, and we ended up sending the ball back in our direction towards our forward 50. The game was done by then. A lot of Carlton fans left at 3/4 time. So it took the zip out of the final quarter a little bit. And I think at the final siren, there was definitely an element of relief. It was overrun by joy, but there was definitely an element of relief, because we've seen this script so many times before. But there were players who did step up. There was one player in particular I want to talk about if we're going to talk about the final quarter, and that's Zach Fisher, because that last quarter from him, he had 10 touches in the last quarter, and that was great. But he had 2 tackles, which resulted in 2 holding the ball free kicks. And you want to talk about taking things personally. He took that so personally. And we always talk about Zach Fisher. We knock his execution, never the intent, because his intent's always great. And he has a really great work rate and ethic, but his execution sometimes isn't where we need him to be. His move this season to the forward half of the ground and what he's been able to do and what he was able to do yesterday, that last quarter, I just thought, wow, like, this is a club that is all in. Like, the buy-in is real and you want everyone playing their part. Robbie Hansen Jr. last week as sub was excellent. Fish did that yesterday. And it was efforts like those that were able to help us steady the ship multiple times throughout the game, but particularly in the last quarter.
I've got the exact same note. I've written a note here. We've found a way to utilize the sub in the correct way, because the sub rule is something for me where I've been critical of it, where I don't feel like it does anything for the game, and I don't feel like most of the time it impacts games at all. The types of players that teams bring on are midfielders or wingers a lot of the time that, maybe give a bit of run in a game, but physically, I think when the game gets down to it in the last quarter, the physicality picks up and those sort of players don't impact. And, we've just found a way to get players that aren't physical, because this sort of goes against what I was saying, where you're right. Fisher moving more in the forward line. You don't have his defensive frailties to worry about quite as much up there, but he's very, very lively. He can use the ball well when he's not under crazy amounts of pressure off our half back line. That's why we brought in Caleb Daniels, and we'll talk about more of these guys when we talk about the defense. But I completely agree with you. He was really, really important, just like Robert Hansen was the week before, in different ways completely, where Robert Hansen was creating the opportunities to get us into the frame to win the game potentially last week. And then this week, Fisher was buzzing around every pack, laying tackles and winning the ball for us in crucial moments. So I completely agree. I think we found a way to utilize the sub really, really well. Who will it be next week? We never really know. Fisher probably deserves a shot like Robert Hansen got a shot in this game. But, you know, as long as we're playing players in there that can make an impact, once again, this is Clarkson, you know, sort of dreaming up this sort of stuff, and he's found a way to make the sub really, really impactful. The last 2 points I've got here about the game before we go into the defense and the mids and the forwards. I'm so, so happy we won in the Bounding Roo Guernsey. I don't remember the last time we won in this Guernsey, because other away games that we've played, we've still worn the stripes. Or we've worn the Indigenous Guernsey instead of wearing the Bounding Roo. And I just think, I've said this a couple of times on the pod, when are we going to win in this Guernsey? I would love, if anyone can find the last win we had in the Bounding Roo, please send it through and I can repost it and give you some credit, because it has been so long, and that Guernsey is the most beautiful Guernsey of all time. Thank God we finally won in that Guernsey. And I don't know if you saw this, Marnie, as well, because you know, you're at the game, but on the broadcast, they showed this kid crying in the crowd, the Carlton kid crying in the crowd. And I felt, it was a little bit funny as a North fan, but it was also, I felt really bad for the kid. And I remember being like 10 years old and watching North get smashed, and I would be crying as well. So shout out to the kid. I hope you're doing okay. Hopefully the last quarter little spurt made you feel a little bit better, but I'm glad we still got the win. But yeah, they're my last 2 notes, Marnie. If you've got anything else to say about the game before we go to the different lines.
The last time we probably won in that Bounding Roo Guernsey was the 90s.
Yeah. It definitely feels like it.
I have beef with that Guernsey because I hate how the long sleeves have the hoops. It needs to be all
I liked
blue.
it. I love Chom's Guernsey.
It's got to be like back to its original roots. That original Guernsey in the 90s was the Bounding Roo with the blue sleeves. And I think would be my preference. But I mean, like, that's just, you know, that's me nitpicking, right?
I liked it. I was talking to some of the Close to a Flag guys. I said it's his chlong sleeved Guernsey, which I thought was very, very funny. So I'm just going to drop that one in there.
Right.
All right, let's go to some of the different lines of the team. You can pick, Marnie. Would you like to start with the forward line, the back line, or the midfield?
Jack Darling.
Forward line it is. You talk to me about Jack Darling, Marnie. You take this one.
The first minute of the game, I thought he was done.
Yeah, it looked really bad on the broadcast too, because they zoomed right in and it was awful.
Horrible. And actually quite interesting. He was off for probably 2/3 of the first quarter. So it forced Nick Larkey to go into the ruck when Sherry needed a rest. And I wonder how much that too throughout our structure going forward. But it's maybe something we need to look at. Like, I really don't think that we should be making unnecessary changes. I am so big on this. And I understand there are players in the VFL who absolutely deserve a shot at senior level. But on the flip side, I wouldn't be making any unforced changes to a side that clearly is united as a 23 and confident and feeling good. So that is, you know, it's always a really difficult one. But when Jack Darling wasn't there, you can just see how important he is for our structure. His chase down tackle on Adam Chera in the third quarter, it was his goal on the siren at 3/4 time last week. It was his goal in the second quarter yesterday to kickstart what was an epic 2 quarters of dominance. But that chase down tackle on Chera, I mean, that's going to live rent-free in my head. You could
That
talk
that
about
led to the Robert Hansen Jr. goal as well, which was such a massive moment in the game because that's straight after they kicked 2 in a row as well.
and you can talk about him being, he was turned 33 a couple of weeks ago. You talk about him being a veteran and old and slow and whatever you want. But the thing with these players is they don't lose what it means to be a good footballer. And Jack Darling in his prime was such an excellent footballer. So he might not have the tank that he once had. And he may not have the, ability to sustain it over 4 quarters or kick big bags of goals anymore. But you can't take away the effort and you can't take away the fundamentals of being a good footballer. And that effort yesterday, time and time again, after he was significant, he was in hospital overnight of getting plastic surgery on that gash. Like that's, and there's photos of him from the game yesterday where he was bleeding through his sock. That's how bad it was. And still, like, just a warrior. That's why he's the king of Arden Street.
I've written a note here about Jack Darling. That is the most veteran leadership game I've seen for a while because on the broadcast they were showing his sock all the time. The thing was just red. His tackle, to start the transition, to get us possession of the ball, to start the transition for the goal that we needed to steady the ship. Like you said, he kicked a big goal as well, taking a great mark. I don't know. I've questioned Darling a little bit, and I never questioned his leadership. And I think he's so important to our structure. I just want a little bit more output from him. I think he kicked 1 goal in 3 games, and I sort of said, I don't think we should take him out of the team, but I think we need another option up there as a key position player to kick goals. And I think this game sort of epitomized to a lot of the fan base, and hopefully they can see what he does offer, even if it isn't just goals. Because I could definitely see this forward line slipping into some of the old habits if he isn't there directing traffic. Because he doesn't get heaps of touches. He got 8 or 9 touches for the game, but every time he touched the ball forward of center as well, something positive happened, or he never butchers it, or he makes a decision that's smart. And I think that's really, really important. So fantastic stuff, Jack Darling. And look, maybe he'll kick the winner next week against the Hawks. But speaking on the forward line, one thing I noticed structure-wise, I love the setup that we went in with this game where Larkey was leading up the ground more, took some fantastic contested marks in the middle of the ground, half forward and half back, took a fantastic one around half back. We've obviously questioned Larkey as well with his output goals-wise, and he kicked 1 in this game after kicking 3 the week before against Freo. The thing I loved, and once again, I'm giving Clarkson credit for this, is Larkey was pushing up the ground more to create a contest. When Zerha and Curtis are isolated in the forward line 1v1, Clarkson saw those matchups on Sard and Haynes for PC and for Zerha and said, those two aren't going to be able to cover those guys. Give those guys space to operate. Larkey, you push up the ground and try and win us possession if we need to bomb it long, and get those guys one-on-one or isolated down in that forward line because they're going to win it more often than not. And I've got a note here on the PC and Bull partnership, 5 goals between them, 14 score involvements between them. So they weren't just doing it for themselves, they were doing it for the team. I love what this forward line is really building there. And I think coaching-wise, we've got to give the forward line, Clarkson, and our forward coaches credit for that, because I think we've really found a way for the forward line to be structured and to be dangerous.
I thought Haynes was really good yesterday for Carlton. I thought he was probably their best defender. I know the Wiedering, he went off for a period of time. He hurt his ankle, but he came back on. But I thought he was actually quite good. But Cam Zerha is actually flying under the radar still. Kicked 3 goals yesterday. And for what Jack Darling's not kicking, Bull is. That's exactly the reason why we've brought someone like Jack Darling in, because you've got Wiedering and Silvani who have to cover Darling and Larkey, who only kicked 1 goal apiece, but then it frees up Bull, and he's got 3, and then Paul Curtis could have had more. He could have had 4 or 5. Just sensational stuff. What I loved about Nick Larkey's game is it's the strongest game of football I've seen Nick Larkey play for a very, very long time. I think often when it comes to Nikolaki, especially in a marking contest, he easily loses his footing. I feel like he does go to ground quite a bit, and I think he can be criticised for being soft in the contest quite often by our supporters. And I think that's actually warranted. I do think that, yeah, he probably doesn't get the free kicks that we would hope that he would, and there are other forwards in the competition who probably get treated a lot better than he does, but he then needs to be stronger and needs to work harder for his own ball. There's a couple there that slipped through his fingers and that he probably should have been able to, just kill and mark and go back and have the shot or whatever it was. But really strong performance from him. And I think that will give him a lot of confidence in his game moving forward. The forward line is functioning very, very well. Paul Curtis's defensive game is sublime. And he and Jacob Constanti partner up in the defensive element. Like Constanti had 9 touches, but he had 5 tackles and 18 pressure acts. So it's what we're doing without the ball in hand that's making us so much more impressive as well. And I think the way this forward line is functioning with the addition of one person has just been an absolute masterstroke for sure.
Yeah, Constanti's my last note in the forward line here. I think in this episode too, just to point out, we usually try and cover every player. Probably not, I've got notes on specific players here, but I don't think we're going to have time. Otherwise, this pod's going for 2 hours because I want to talk so much in depth about this performance. So if we do skip over a couple of players here, I apologize. We have more. I've got more notes on the midfielders and the defenders, to be fair. But Constanti, another player that's heavily criticized. You either love him or you hate him. And I was going to ask, you just sort of answer my question. I was going to say is, I want to know your thoughts on Constanti. And he needs to be more of a goal threat. Don't get me wrong. And he's I think he's had 9 goals, 5, 9 goals, 6 now. I think he kicked a point. So he needs to be more of a goal threat. But he's 20 years old, and he won us possession at least 5 times with either a holding the ball or a tackle to create a contest, which we won. He even in the last quarter, right in the last 5 minutes. Actually, it was the last contest where we won the ball and got it forwards before the siren went. He flew off the half forward line into that centre bounce contest. Go and watch the last centre bounce contest of the game. He screams through that pack, almost like when Matthew Lloyd barreled through a pack from the forward line once. He didn't kill anyone, obviously, but it's the intent. And I really, really like Jacob Constanti. And I think instead of trying to replace him with someone who kicks more goals, we've got to find a way to get someone next to him in the forward line who does kick goals. If that's Fisher, if that's bringing in Banch, I don't know. We need that buzzy small forward. Don't get me wrong. But for me personally, long term, I think I like it next to Constanti, because everyone who complains about Constanti not doing enough or tackles don't count or whatever, they will be the first people to complain when the transition from our forward line to our back line comes back to what it was 6 months ago, because he does so much around the ground to stop that from happening. Yes, I agree, needs to be more of a goal threat, and I think he can develop that. Like I said, 20 years old, first round pick, give him a chance. Another player from Sydney that we've got who we're maybe writing off a little bit early, like the other 2 that we've got, plus Parker. But look, I love what he does, and you're right, his pressure acts are through the roof. I'm a massive fan of his, and I think just like Jack Darling, he's a piece of structure in this forward line that makes it function so much better than it was last year, because I've been on record saying I think our forward line last year was our worst line of the ground. Our defense last year obviously struggled, but our forward line didn't function. We didn't kick scores. We didn't keep the ball in our forward line, and I think Constanti, along with Darling, helps that so much. So,
Pink Pony Club, I'm gonna keep on dancing at the Toby Pink Club, the Toby Pink Club. Ooh, what have you done? You've kept Charlie Colonel to hardly any possessions. Pink Pony Club, I'm gonna keep on dancing at the Toby Pink Club, the Toby Pink Club.
Hey Josh, Jen here. Kanga, Kanga, Kanga. Roo, roo, roo. How bloody good. Pink, 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 pink. He owned Kerno today. Join in the chorus, everybody.
Charlie Comben, he's no pretender. Charlie Comben, North Melbourne defender. What an absolute gun he was for us today. Like, absolutely just took it all on his shoulders, weathered the storm, and came out through it. God, I love Chom.
Hey guys, great pod. Fucking hell, what a win. That was my first that I'd experienced in person at a ground. I've been to many games and every single one of them was a loss, so I was in tears. Go North.
The boys may have walked away with the 4 points, but that felt like a loss. If that last quarter, though, was played in either of the first 3, that would have been a great victory. Well, all negatives aside, I can't wait to re-watch the first 3 quarters.
Another scalp for Pink. My God, is this bloke playing out of his skin? Somebody point out to me where the club is, because I'm going to keep on going to that Pink Toby club.
Let's go to the midfield here because this is going to be the long part of the podcast because our midfield was fantastic yesterday. You pick a name, Marnie. I've got notes on most of the midfielders here. Pick your favourite, give me the spiel, and let's go from there.
Oh, God. I mean, where do you even start? I think LDU's game was underrated as well.
100%.
The thing with North, we expect everyone to be elite for 120 minutes of every single game. And we're just not at that stage yet. But in the second quarter, when the game started to increase in intensity a little bit, it was LDU for me, and she's probably with him, who were the ones who started to get the ball rolling. And then it was the likes of Parker and Powell and McKercher who took it and ran with it as the game went on. But I thought LDU's clearance work in the second quarter absolutely was the fire starter for us and was the reason why we were able to start getting our hands on the footy in the middle of the ground and starting to move it quickly into our forward 50. I thought his game was great. If he had kicked that goal in the third, it would have absolutely brought the house down. And those are the sorts of things we probably need to start getting more from him. That game he played against Richmond last year when he kicked 3 goals is like one of the best LDU games I've ever seen. And we know he's capable of doing that. And that will move him into the elite midfielder category. So he does need to finish those things. But if that one miss is the only knock I have on his game yesterday, then, that's okay. I can live with that.
100%. The $1 million man, which everybody is talking about, we've instantly, within a week of him signing that deal, started putting 5 times the pressure on him. And I can understand from a point, I did say last week jokingly and sort of serious that his $1 million deal doesn't kick into next year. So let's not use that quite yet on him. But 7 clearances, 9 score involvements, 16 contested possessions. The one thing for me with LDU this season is his contested work is at a career high for him. It's not as sexy. It's not as flashy. He's not bursting out of the packs. Last week was the difference with that because he was fantastic last week. But he's dominating in a different way. And is it the way we need? I think that's maybe up for debate. But yesterday it definitely was. I completely agree with you. His contested work and the clearances he won in tight spaces for us, distributing with clean handball to the runners on the outside, was one of the reasons that we absolutely killed the Carlton midfield. Those numbers, like I said, I'll repeat them. 16 contested possessions, 7 clearances, 9 score involvements. Fantastic stuff from him. I thought he was immense. You spoke about Shees. I think we're really finding Harry Shees' position that he needs to play. No, not many centre bounce attendances, sort of starting off that half forward line. And if we get the ball out quickly, he's down there to create. But if we don't, he pushes straight up to all the way up to the half back line around those contests. And he's that player receiving it on the outside and able to use that ball very, very classy. The only real notes I've got for him are like just a classy performance, but 25 pressure acts from him. And he's been tackling and pressuring more than I've seen in every game he's ever played for this football club. So he's not afraid of the contested stuff too. A classy performance from him, but when he needed to stick his nose over the footy, he did. He led us for pressure acts, I believe, as well with 25. So another fantastic Shees performance. He's back.
Oh, he is back. And that goal, I've just jumped out of my seat when he kicked that. It was beautiful. It had to be Harry. I just thought it was awesome. I've spoken about the one Luke in the midfield. I'll speak about the other as well. Luke Parker could be the captain of this football club. What that man can do. Those around him in the midfield walk taller when he's there. He is head first in every single contest. He puts his body on the line and it's inspiring. Like, it's just incredible. He will be, at this point of the season, in our top 5 for the best and fairest, and I think he'll end up finishing there as well. He's been a phenomenal addition to this midfield, and I think he's a big reason as to why we've been able to start tightening up defensively across the ground, because you speak about Constanti in the forward line and the pressure that he brings. I mean, heading into Good Friday, we were in the bottom 4 in the competition for defense across the board, and I'd love to know what the number is now, because we've absolutely tightened up in every area of the ground, and he has been a really, really big part of that. But he's not just doing it defensively, he's doing it offensively as well. He is, like, inspiring is the word that comes to mind when I think about Luke Parker.
It's the epitome of leadership, isn't it? Because some stats from him, I mean, 8 clearances and 24 pressure acts. So they're up there with Shees for the pressure acts for the game. And on the broadcast in the last quarter, and those last few centre bounces after Carlton had kicked a couple, he's right in there and he's barking orders. He's pointing where people should go. And I love Luke Parker. I completely agree. He's easily top 5, arguably could be top 3 in our best and fairest this season. He's been one of our most consistent contributors. And I'm of the belief in this day and age that players can play very, very good quality football. Players of his quality can play football well into their say 34. I think we can still get good football out of him. I know the 3-year deal for him, he's going to be playing football close to this still, I believe, when he's 33, maybe even a 34-year-old, because his game's never been explosive. It's not about athleticism. It's about toughness, which you never lose. It's about IQ, which you never lose, and just pure desire and willing to win that football. And Jack Darling is the same. His game isn't that. His game is strength, composure, and IQ. And Parker is so similar to that. So, I mean, we're going to Sean Atley Club champ votes this week, Marnie, which we'll talk about at the end, are going to be very, very tough. But he's got to be right up there in that, because I think he was an absolute match winner in the guts. And we talked about this last year. When we lost that Collingwood game, and we need a player like that to be able to go into that midfield and win us the games and structure it up and get people tackling and fighting for each other. And he fully does that. Someone I'm going to talk about here, one of my favorite players, Colby McKercher. Now, he had some shocking turnovers in this game, but the caveat I'm going to put on those turnovers is he made the right decisions. They just didn't come off. And when he becomes that player, when he's 24 years old, that can spirit into the middle, everything he did was a hair away from opening up the game to easy transition goals for us. He needs to be smarter. He's got the quality and the skill to make those decisions, but he's a young player, and I'm going to give him a pass. Everything outside of those bad turnovers that he did was phenomenal. He's been unbelievable the last month to 6 weeks of football. 9 rebound 50s, 2 goals. You know, he leads us in meters gained every single week, and we've really found his spot now. Sort of no more She's half back. She's sort of half forward to mid, and him going back to half back and driving us off that half back line. He's honestly one of my favorite players, if not my favorite player in this team at the moment, because yes, the turnovers need to be tightened up, and I don't want to give him a pass for that. But you go back and look at his numbers and everything he did positive, it so clearly outweighs those turnovers. I love this guy. Fellow Tassie Ladas Lonnie boys, we're built different, Marnie. I tell you what.
He copped a lot of criticism in the early parts of the season. It kind of looked like he was struggling with some second-year blues a little bit. I can put my hand up and say I really thought that a spell in the VFL was what was needed. It's not always a punishment, sometimes just to go back there, re-find a bit of form and confidence, but I'm really glad to say that I was wrong in that judgment. Pretty much since the Richmond game, he's been on fire. His past 4 or 5 performances have just been electric, and he He's kind of it's funny, he's kind of what we wanted Sean Atlee to be, right? He's got this pace.
I was going to
and
say Sean Atlee before. I said it reminds me of Atlee running. Oh, I should have said it. I can't believe you said Sean Atlee. I had that thought. God damn it.
I do like that. They're telepathic.
Yeah,
At this
100%.
But it just, look, no discredit to Sean Atlee. He's a class above Colby McKercher. But just the way he runs and bounces the ball, he's got the creative license to kind of do what he wants. And I think that freedom really, really complements him nicely. I think we need to start putting trust in our players to execute the game plan the way we need them to, but in their own way. So I love what he's been able to do over the past 5 weeks. And it's crazy to think about some of the talk that, was going around. I can put my hand up and say I probably contributed to that, not to the extreme that some people were going to, but I definitely questioned where he was at after a really promising debut here. But God, he was good yesterday. I want you to talk about Tom Powell and his debut for all the punters listening at home.
Tom Powell was fantastic yesterday, and I've never hated this man. 8 clearances, 614 meters gained yesterday for Tom Powell, which was unbelievable. Tom Powell, I don't want to justify any of this again because I don't have to, but Tom Powell has settled into that 3rd or 4th midfielder role really, really well. And I think my query about Tom Powell at the start of the year was I feel like we, as a fan base, were expecting him to become maybe one of those, not maybe the best midfielder at the club, but maybe more like towards an LDU. And he's not going to be that. But he is such an important cog in that midfield. He did everything right yesterday. That was one of the cleanest games of football I've seen from a player, not just Tom Powell. I think the difference is he's not blazing away anymore. He's maybe looking to use his hands more than he's looking to use his feet around the contest. And he's receiving the football in areas around the packs that give him that little bit of time to use his skills. So I really, really liked Tom Powell's performance inside and outside. He did a bit of stuff on the inside and held up the footy when need be. But when he got it on the outside, he made the right decision. So, he was one of the best on the ground as well. And nothing crazy, outstanding, game-breaking runs or goals or anything. But it was just the most complete, solid, fantastic, reliable performance I've seen from him and from lots of players on our team. So I'm really, really high on Tom Powell because of that. But I'm going to flip it slightly for you, Marnie. George Wardlaw, I want you to talk to me about where he's at the moment because you know me, I love me some George Wardlaw. But if we're talking about a player that could potentially need a little spell on the twos, not as a punishment, but as a little bit of a recharge for him, I think maybe we're getting towards that. He got subbed, and why do you think he got subbed? And 2, what's your opinion on where he's at right now?
So we had 11 touches to 3/4 time, which is where the trigger was pulled. I can see the benefit of us doing that because Zach Fisher's last quarter was epic. However, our intensity in the middle of the ground dropped when George went off the ground. And that is something that I think we really need to have a look at because there were a lot of times where Carlton just picked apart our defence as they moved the ball up the ground and they did charge late. And I do think that maybe an element of that was due to George not being there, despite the fact that, Fish did have an impact defensively as well as offensively. A couple of comments have been made over the past few weeks about how we seem to let George kind of slip under the radar and avoid maybe some criticism where it might be warranted because we love him so much and we love his intention. And I think that comes down to what he does without the football. And I think what we do without the footy in hand is what's going to make us a better and more complete side moving forward. I can understand the argument of giving him a spell in the twos, especially because Will Phillips has been playing some really, really good footy. And maybe there is a case to be made for him to have one last shot in the senior side. I don't think that's going to happen though. I do think that like Kurt, we will persist with George unless it's his body that actually needs a little bit of a rest and a little bit of a break. But he's going to be the only one that's going to know if that's required and if that move is made.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at some numbers here. George Wardlaw had 1 tackle for the game and only 10 pressure acts. Robert Hanson Jr. had more pressure acts than George Wardlaw. And Wardlaw is obviously the far superior talented player. And he's going to be a stalwart of this club for many, many years. So I'm not doubting where this man will be because I love George Wardlaw. But 1 tackle and 10 pressure acts for him is not a good game when he doesn't contribute maybe with his disposal. He went about 50% disposal efficiency again. Last week was 35. So he looks fantastic around the ball, but if he's not at minimum bringing that pressure and the tackles, I just think maybe we need to shift something up. And I don't disagree with you, Marnie. I think him just being around the football and being there makes teams think twice about taking a clean possession. And I agree where I think that can lead to maybe what happened a little bit out of the center in the last quarter. But last week, it wasn't his best game, but he still brought pressure acts and he still brought the tackles, which we want that at minimum and want to add the things on top of his game, like bursting out of a pack and disposing of the football correctly. So I agree. I think they'll persist, but I wouldn't be against maybe giving him a couple of weeks in the twos and giving it. We don't even need to bring in a midfielder, to be honest. We've got so many midfielders. We can give Simpkin got 3 centre bounce attendances in the game. You know what I mean? He can play a little bit more, in the guts. We can give Sheasel more. We can give McKercher and O'Sullivan can get a crack, something like that. But look, I think I'm at the point where I'd probably at least just give him a week, maybe a little bit of a, hey, mate, just let's use that talent that you've got. But I also am not going to be upset if he plays the next week. So look, I think it's an important discussion to be had because I don't, there's been plenty of people messaging me about George Wardlaw, and sometimes I give him a little bit of a pass for my love for him, and that is fair enough because I'm a biased fan at the end of the day. But we've got to call it how we see it a little bit, and I think he needs to take a step. He needs to take a little bit of a step up because we know he can, and I've seen what that man can do, and it's electrifying. So look, let's talk about the last midfielder we'll go to here. You touched him a little bit before, is Tristan Sherry. I think he broke even with the ruck battle. It wasn't one of his best games. I liked one thing he did early was he took a really good lead up mark on the wing right in front of De Koning. We sort of had to bail it out of our defence, and he took a big mark on the wing to sort of relieve the pressure to stop Carlton getting it into the forward line. And he didn't really do that for the rest of the game, unfortunately, which, look, that's one thing I've been critical of him. I want him to do more around the ground. We're taking 2 or 3 relieving marks a game, but geez, it would be hard 2 weeks in a row going up against, Darcy and Jackson last week. And then this week, another ruck combination in Pitney and in De Koning. He's really doing it all by himself. He himself has basically faced 4 bullies 2 weeks in a row. So I think you're right. Not his best game. And I think our midfielders did the work. He maybe didn't dish it up to them, although the one tap that he did to LDU that burst us forward and Paul Curtis kicked that little soccer goal was one of the cleanest taps I've ever seen in my life. It was poetry in motion. But yeah, this is not a criticism on Jerry because to battle all these blokes single-handedly every week is an astonishing effort from him. And he definitely broke even, in my opinion. But geez, he cops a belting every single week. So we know he's got levels above this, but when he's facing a double ruck combination like he has the last 2 weeks, I still think it's a behemoth effort to at least break even.
I think Carlton's decision to play Pitnet speaks volumes of Sherry's presence and what a threatening proposition he is for sides. I found it interesting because, like I said earlier, TDK beat Sherry in the second game we played against Carlton last season. So I was quite intrigued by that. I know TDK played more forward and but he did come through the ruck. I thought that they probably combined to beat Sherry. And the reason why I say that is I think Sherry was quite frustrated. He had a scuffle close to our forward line with TDK for quite some time. He seemed to let his aggression spill over a little bit, probably because he was getting beaten at times. I don't think that it had a negative impact on the game. I still think he was serviceable for us, and the synergy that he had with our midfield ended up overarching what Carlton's ruck duo was able to do. So I think in isolation, I find the Carlton duo better than Sherry on the day, but I don't think that impacted our midfielders and Sherry's ability to work together to get the ball to ground and move it into our forward line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. Yeah, not one of his standouts, but 1v2 basically for me, and you're just like, God, it would be so hard, and he cops it every week. So no, good performance by him, but we know there's levels, and I know he'll reach those levels again very, very soon. So, look, let's talk about the defense here, and us redheaded brothers have to stick together. We've copped a lot through our lives. Getting bullied in high school. We're part of the black community now, which TikTok is really pushing on me, which is a nice thing. But Toby Pink, Marnie, I imagine at the start of the season if we said Toby Pink is undroppable and is a staple and a pillar in our backline. And he has been phenomenal. This is the biggest improvement I can remember in a player for my whole time at North Melbourne. He got delisted and re-rookied at the start in the off season, and now he's just the most consistent pillar down there. The Toby Pink Pony Club thing going around with the AI photo of him with all of the scalps he's got is fantastic. Shout out to Toby Pink. Like, no, Charlie Kurt, like, yeah, okay. He kept Alan goalless. Alan's a player who plays in a poor team, gets thrown forward and back. He kept Lynch goalless when he was playing on him directly. You know, Lynch is a player who hasn't been at his best for years. Charlie Curnow is one of the best forwards in the game, and he's kept him goalless on the MCG in a win. That is unbelievable stuff. He had our most intercept possessions for the game, I think, or he was up there in intercept possessions again. Just a couple of things from him, like he took a massive intercept mark right at the start of the game in front of Curnow, or over the top of a pack as well. And it just shows me he's confident. He knows he can go and clunk that football now. He looks like he's got swagger. He's got confidence. And I genuinely believe we've got a player that can be part of our next finals team. We've got a player here in Toby Pink that can be. Give him a 3-year deal and let him bet into this back line, because we've got a defender here that we can rely on now. He's done enough for me to prove that.
I think the story of Toby Pink this year showcases that it's not always talent that's going to get you where you need to be. He has been working so hard to make the most of what probably was his last opportunity to make it at AFL level. As you said, he was delisted at the end of last year. He was re-rookied. He's put on a lot of size, and he's really, really strong. He was used as like that third forward sort of foil last season. He's gone back into defence this year, and not really much is getting past him. I think a lot of people will say that Curnow wasn't 100% right, and he didn't look 100% right, but that's on Carlton for deciding to play him.
Yep.
Toby Pink can only line up against his direct opponent on the day and do a job, and he's done that multiple times this season. Even going back to that Melbourne game, like he never should have been dropped after that. No. He has barely put a foot wrong this season. I think he's been awesome, and I think the turnaround for him has been so pleasing to see, because I think a lot of us were prepared to write him off. But full credit to him and the work that he's put in to get him and this side and the back line where it needs to be. I think has been unreal.
Oh, I love Toby Pink, and we all got those Toby Pink shirts at the start of the year. And I genuinely put it on after the game last night and went, I'm proud to wear this shirt, because we were there before the breakout, and we got him before he was big. You know what I mean? And I love it. We're the OG Toby Pink gang. Shout out to the Carlton draft. Go get your Toby Pink shirts from the Carlton draft. Seriously, like I love Toby Pink. His partner in crime, Marnie, Charlie Comben, apart from having the sleeves on, I know you hate the sleeves, was he fit? Do you think he should have played in this game? Because by the end of the game, he looked so sore. I would probably personally maybe rest him next week, just because we need him. Like, Hawthorn is going to be so tough down there. And I'm not saying we're not going to win it, so don't play him. But there's these winnable games coming up after that. We need a fit Charlie Comben, because he's a star in that back line. Do you think he was fit? Would you have played him?
I don't think they would have played him if he wasn't okay. And I did speak to him on Friday at the club, and he said that he was fine and ready to go. The sleeves suggest to me that they were trying to protect his shoulder at all costs. And he definitely looked to be favouring the left side by the end of the game. I would not play him next week. I think we have other options that we could look to. I don't know where Aiden Core is at with his calf. He could potentially, he'd probably be the next tall in line to come back unless he's injured, or Will Dawson. I think it probably speaks volumes of Callan Dawson, unfortunately, if we're opting for a 3/4 fit Charlie Compen over a fit Callan Dawson, then maybe that's a bit of writing on the wall there, which kills me to say because I absolutely love Callan Dawson. But he still was good yesterday. I thought Chom was pretty solid in defence. I still think he was able to have an impact, but I don't know if he'll be there next week against Hawthorn.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, look, the effort from Chom to play to the end, and I mean, he even made Carlton were trying to like a little overlap handball or like a little chip kick over the top in the last quarter, and he reached out and slapped it, and it ended up in a transition for us in a really important moment in the game. So, look, cannot question his effort, his toughness at the football, and just you know, you want to talk about the team getting around each other and playing for Clarkson, playing for the club, and wanting to be there in these moments. That his performance epitomised that. Not his best game, just of football in general, but to play through a fracture through in his shoulder blade is unbelievable stuff. So I agree. I probably wouldn't play him next week just because he's so important. But credit to him for trying to play this game and still, being able to contribute at a high level for us. And I think that epitomizes maybe where the team's at in general as well. Finn O'Sullivan, what a classy player we've got. He's sort of back down in that back line a little bit more. We sort of played with him sort of wing half forward a little bit, but I guess with Colby and Shees maybe going back and doing more stuff in the forward line or pushing forward. Finn O'Sullivan was so clean yesterday. When they bombed the ball in, the ball would come to ground. He'd sit on the backside of the pack and he would scoop that thing up and distribute and make the right decision. His sidestep is one of the better ones that I'm seeing in the league at the moment. He's so strong through the hips and through the core. He shakes everybody like that. He was such a cool, calm, and collected operator, really deep in that back line yesterday.
His work rate is the best of anyone in our side. His game yesterday, I can picture in my mind, I think it was in the second quarter, Carlton were moving the ball outside. He managed to float forward, or maybe Carlton was going forward. A lot of it's a blur to me. I think Carlton were moving the ball towards their forward line, and Finn O'Sullivan was so determined to run across to the man that was like 40, 50 meters away and spoil it out of bounds. Like, when did we last have a North player? So probably Luke McDonald. I think that I see a lot of the heart and soul of Luke McDonald in Foss. I love him. I really love him. He is so classy, but no frills. He's a clean footballer and a clean user of the football, but he's also just a part of the chain. You know what I mean? LDU and Kirch, and Harry, these are the guys that are doing the fancy things. Whereas Foss is so reliable already and he's having such an impact already. But it's his work rate for me that is just unbelievable, and something that a lot of our players can take a leaf out of his book when it comes to that.
No, absolutely. And he was getting in a lot of little scraps as well around the ground. He's got a little bit of dog in him as well, which I really, really like. And, what's the number 29 for Carlton?
George Hewitt. Yeah,
so I don't know what Hewitt did in that game or what was going on, why he was beefing with so many little players, maybe because he wasn't very effective. But even like him and Foss were having a little scuffle on the wing as well. Simpkin was getting into him. And I don't know, I love that Foss is part of this, I don't know, this little pack of players that don't mind getting in someone's face. He was smiling and laughing while he was getting jumper punched by this bloke as well, and I love it. I just see that twitch in his eye, so I love it. And he's really playing an important role down in that back line. I'm sort of going to bunch these last few together just so we don't go too long because we can get to Sean Atlee Club Champ and then we can get to Golden Helmet. So I'm just going to bunch up Caleb Daniel, Luke McDonald, and Griffin Logue yesterday. I've seen some criticism maybe for Griffin Logue. I think he was solid. He didn't do heaps, but Carlton's forward line also didn't do heaps. Sometimes I think if your defense, I got to the end of the game and tried to think about what did I think of the defense apart from Pink and maybe Chom and Foss. And I didn't really have many thoughts. And it wasn't because they were bad at all. They were really solid, but it was because they just did the job and they moved on and got on with it. And, you know, I've made this comparison before, which some people get and some people don't. But when you're going to watch a movie, if you don't notice anything about how the movie is filmed or made, that means it's perfect because it just did what it needed to do. If nothing stands out, that's exactly what it needs to be. And I think this game was sort of like that for a lot of those guys. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do anything outstanding and crazy and things you go, wow, look at that. But just really solid defensive performances from the three of those guys. I mean, Caleb Daniel, you know, I mean, you've criticized him a bit and so has a lot of the fan base about maybe his impact with this team. You know, I've been a little bit more positive on him, but I think he's really, you know, now that we're moving and we're fighting as one, his effectiveness is going to shine more because he needs the players to kick to. He needs options to work with like he had at the Dogs. And, you know, I think he's a really solid sort. He had more pressure acts than Wardlaw yesterday as well, which was fantastic. I'm not trying to go back to Wardlaw, but more on him. Like, you know, he's doing those things for such a small bloke. And Luke McDonald, I mean, what a season he's having after, you know, no more captaincy for him, so much criticism the last 2 years, unfairly a lot of the time, especially for last year. I think he was pretty solid. But look, maybe just a quick sum up of Daniel, Elmack and for you yesterday, because I think they were all really, really solid and contributed and played their part.
Yeah, I thought Logue was okay. He was definitely better against Fremantle last week. Mitch McGovern kicking 4 goals is probably a bit of an issue, and that would probably fall on him. I would say that would have been his direct opponent. And so probably can't let Mitch McGovern be kicking bags of 4. But, you know.
I didn't feel like he played directly on him a lot, though. Like, I don't know. I didn't feel like McGovern's...
I feel like our backline works more as a system. Like, Toby Pink will have the matchup on Curnow, but maybe it works more of a system, but whoever was on Mitch McGovern didn't really seem like anyone was
because they swapped a lot, Marnie, though. Like I saw Chom on McGovern sometimes, I saw Logue, and I saw times where Pink was going and covering McGovern, and then Chom sort of dropped back on things. But you're totally right. Like it's a system thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the way the defense is trying to work now. Yes, they have their direct opponents, but also they're working more as a unit than they are individually. But regardless, I thought Griff's game was fine, just better last week. But he's definitely, you know, looks completely different to the player he was prior to over to WA. I thought that Luke McDonald's game was also really good, and I think him stepping down as captain at the start of this year was the best thing for him. He's playing with freedom. He obviously is carrying a lighter load, and he actually can just lead with his action now. It's the best season Luke McDonald's had since his 2020 best and fairest year. So I've been really, really impressed with him. He's just enjoying his footy and having a good time. It's kind of what Jack Zeeble was doing at the later part of his career when he stepped down as captain, but probably better, to be honest. I really, really enjoy Luke McDonald yesterday, but his season as a whole. I was impressed with Caleb Daniel yesterday, and I have been a critic of him. I actually thought Caleb Daniel's work in the contest and around the ball, he actually did some really nice in and under work when the stoppages were taking place sort of closer to Carlton's attacking 50. Caleb Daniel was actually getting involved a little bit in the middle, and I really liked his work in there. It's not a spot that I would keep him there permanently, but he is so small, so there's a benefit of that. He's able to kind of find room where not many others would be able to. So yes, I do agree. I thought his game was good yesterday as well. It's probably one of the better games I've seen from CD. Tick across the board for the three of them from me.
You love to hear it. Just like me and Tom Powell, Marnie and Caleb's beef is getting restored back to the normal broadcasting. So that's what we like to hear, Marnie. Fantastic. Oh, you got to love him. He's in the helmet. You can't hate anyone who wears a helmet in the AFL.
No, of course. I don't hate anyone who wears a North Melbourne jersey.
That is true. Okay. Sean Atlee Club Champ votes. I've got 3 here I'm going to propose to you, and I want to see if you agree or not. I've gone Parker 3.
Finally.
Parker 3, Powell 2, Pink 1, the 3 Ps. Do you have any others than that? Anyone else you want to debate for?
I think you've got to put Kirch in there.
Well, I've got a note here saying Colby, if he didn't have the turnovers, I would have put him in there. But I think the turnovers just got him out. His game was so good, but I can't not put Pink in there. I can't not put Powell in there. And I can't not put Parker in there. Who would you take out of there?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I just feel like Kirch should be in there.
I mean, look, a tradition in the Further North podcast has been to give 4 votes sometimes for.
You have to. I don't think that you can leave Kirch out of that mix.
Kirch won with Pink.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, give me what would you do? Do you agree Parker 3?
I'd probably go Powell 3, Parker 2, Pink, and Kirch 1.
Okay. Can I debate for Parker because I think he willed us over the line a bit more? Powell was very solid and very good, but I think Parker willed us over the line with his leadership and his toughness in the contest.
It's your podcast. You can do whatever you want. You can tell me to shut up and not give Kirch a vote.
No, I love Colby. He's one of my okay. All right, you're right. It is my podcast. All right. Oh, I feel bad though. But yeah, Parker. Okay, Parker 3, Powell 2, Pink and Colby 1.
Good.
Okay. All right. Golden helmet moment of the game for you, Marnie, please.
Jack Darling. It's Jack Darling. It's the chase down tackle at Adam Chera, and that's the only right answer.
Well, I've gone Simpkins bump on whoever I forgot his name, the guy who wears number 29. I love the Jack Darling bump. That's also up there. They're the 2 things I wrote down for it, and I knew you were going to go Jack Darling, so I have to go Simpkins bump on number 29 that led to the goal.
No, it's Jack Darling. Like that's the only right answer.
Well,
I'm not actually debating that.
I got Parker to 3 votes, so you can have Jack Darling for the golden helmet moment of the game. Is that a deal?
The king.
All right, look, let's leave it there. We've actually got this done in decent time. I thought this was going to go for at least an hour and a half, and we've efficiently wrapped this podcast up, Marnie. It's just years of North knowledge and chemistry that makes this podcast so efficient when you come on. So thank you once again for coming on, Marnie. I'm sure everyone knows where to find you, but Kanga TV, get over there. There's lots going on. And besties stuff, you just so much North, Marnie. It's unbelievable.
You actually can't escape me, which is quite frightening. So, yeah.
Lucky us. I wouldn't have it any other way, Marnie.
Thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be back on Further North. I'm sure next time I'm here, it's going to be for another win. So look out.
Got to pick that game very well. Look, you'll come on after the Geelong game because that's the one that still scares me for the rest of the year. So that means we can guarantee that win. But thank you for tuning in, everybody. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Drop your comments below. There's going to be so much to chat about in this game. Any opinions you agree or disagree with, keep it respectful, but let us know if we're incredibly smart or not. I'm sure you always will. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I'm doing that now. There's so much going on. So follow all that sort of stuff. Thank you for tuning in every week as well, guys. You're the best fans ever. North is coming. NORTHBALL is here. And Further North and Kanga TV are going to be there to cover everything of the NORTHBALL for you. Marnie, thank you very much. We'll chat to you very soon.
Thank you. See you soon.